Behind me is the SSN Tourville, which is a French nuclear attack submarine. The submarine is in Halifax following its first sail across
5,000 kilometres from her home port. This brand new French attack submarine, the Tourville, is making a start.
In a startling shift, Canada has unveiled plans to modernize its aging submarine fleet with a massive 60 billion Canadian dollars investment. This is a game-changing decision that will result in the acquisition of 6 to 12 nuclear-powered submarines, each capable of performing long-duration missions in the Arctic. This shift comes at a time when the Arctic region is rapidly becoming the focal point of geopolitical competition. The melting ice in the Arctic has made the region more accessible, which in turn has drawn the attention of military powers looking to control this resource-rich and strategically vital area. For decades, Canada has been firmly allied with the United States in defense matters, from NORAD, which ensures joint US-Canada aerospace defense, to relying on American military technology for everything from fighter jets to radar systems. Canada has long stood shoulder to shoulder with its southern neighbor. But that partnership is now under scrutiny, and Canada is taking steps that will forever alter its defense landscape. The new submarines will be equipped with cutting-edge technology capable of operating in one of the most hostile environments on Earth, the Arctic. Unlike previous Canadian defense procurements, which would have traditionally gone to American contractors, Canada has decided to place its trust in France. In a move that has sent shockwaves through defense circles, Canada has opted for France's Barracuda-class submarine technology as the backbone of its new fleet. Why France? The decision marks a monumental departure from the long-standing US-Canada defense collaboration. Historically, Canada has relied on US military hardware for its most advanced projects. However, as tensions between the US and some of its NATO allies continue to escalate, Canada is seeking alternative defense partnerships that are less influenced by the political whims of Washington. France, with its nuclear-powered submarines and a growing defense relationship with Canada, has stepped into the void. France's Barracuda-class submarines are a significant leap forward in terms of capability and performance. These submarines offer increased operational endurance, stealth capabilities, and advanced weapon systems that are designed for extended missions in the harsh conditions of the Arctic. The decision is not only about advanced technology, but also about building deeper geopolitical ties with Europe. Canada's decision to turn to France speaks volumes about the changing dynamics in global defense. It's no longer about relying on the US for military protection. Canada is taking its defense into its own hands, and Europe, led by France, is now a key player in that vision. As Canada embraces this new defense strategy, the country is also making bold moves to strengthen its surveillance capabilities, particularly in the Arctic. The Joint Radar System, developed by Australia, is a centerpiece of Canada's new defense architecture, and its significance cannot be overstated. This is not just about military equipment, it's about Canada's sovereignty and its desire to reduce reliance on the US for defense and surveillance technology. Canada has committed to a 6 billion Canadian dollar investment in the Joint Radar System, a sophisticated over-the-horizon radar that is capable of detecting aircraft and ships up to 3,000 kilometers away. What makes Joint stand out is its ability to cover vast distances and provide real-time surveillance by bouncing radio waves off the ionosphere, making it an ideal tool for monitoring the Arctic region. This radar system is critical for Canada, particularly because of the increasing military activity in the Arctic. As the Arctic ice melts and new shipping routes open, the region has become a key strategic focus for both military and economic interests. The Joint Radar will give Canada the ability to monitor the vast, remote northern territories that are increasingly becoming contested. But what's truly remarkable about this decision is that Canada bypassed all of the US defense giants to opt for Australian technology. This was a clear statement that Canada can no longer rely on American defense companies for its cutting-edge systems. Companies like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Raytheon were all contenders for this contract, but Canada chose Australia instead. This isn't just about technology, it's about self-determination and sovereignty. In choosing Australia over the US, Canada is sending a strong message. It no longer feels it can trust American defense consistency. The Arctic is too important to leave in the hands of an unpredictable ally. Canada wants sovereign surveillance, free from the pressures that often come from relying on foreign powers, especially when those foreign powers may have their own geopolitical interests at heart. In essence, this is part of Canada's larger defense diversification strategy. By working with Australia, Canada is building a new defense ecosystem, one that incorporates European and Australasian technology while gradually distancing itself from the US. As if the changes in naval and radar capabilities weren't enough, Canada is now reconsidering its long-standing agreement to purchase 88 F-35 fighter jets from the United States. The deal, valued at $19 billion USD, was signed in 2023, and Canada has already paid for the first 16 units. However, in a move that has raised eyebrows across defense circles, Canada is now reviewing the entire deal. Canada's decision to pause the F-35 deal comes at a time when it is increasingly questioning US foreign policy and its implications on Canadian sovereignty. Defense Minister Bill Blair has called the move a necessary strategic decision to protect Canadian interests. But this shift is being seen by many analysts as the strongest warning Canada has sent to the Pentagon in over 3 decades. The crux of the issue lies in Canada's discontent with US foreign policy. In recent years, US defense and diplomatic strategies have become more erratic and unpredictable, particularly under the Trump administration. For Canada, a country that values stability and consistent international relations, the risk of relying on the US for its most important defense equipment is simply too great. With the changing global order and increasing tensions in regions like the Arctic, Canada feels it can no longer place its national security in the hands of a partner whose positions can change overnight. Canada's reevaluation of the F-35 deal is not an isolated incident. Portugal, just weeks ago, canceled its own F-35 procurement, citing the unpredictability of US foreign policy as a key risk to NATO unity. Portugal's decision to cancel its deal speaks volumes about the lack of trust many NATO allies now have in the United States. This growing distrust poses a significant threat to NATO's cohesion and its ability to function effectively as a united defense force. If more countries begin to turn away from US defense products, it could weaken the alliance and lead to a fragmentation of the Western defense structure. Canada's decision to reconsider the F-35 deal is part of a much broader strategic realignment. Canada is no longer relying solely on the US for its defense needs. Instead, it is actively seeking alternatives from European countries and other partners, like Australia and Sweden. This is a clear shift towards greater autonomy, as Canada looks to reshape its defense ecosystem in a way that reflects its own national interests, rather than simply following the US lead. If Canada does decide to walk away from the F-35 contract, it could set a precedent for other nations to follow suit, leading to a major shift in global defense procurement patterns. For decades, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, has been the symbol of unbreakable trust between Canada and the US. NORAD was established during the Cold War to defend North American airspace from external threats. It has been a cornerstone of US-Canada defense cooperation, ensuring mutual protection across land, sea, and air. However, behind closed doors, the old order is changing. As US foreign policy becomes increasingly unpredictable, Canada is quietly building alternative defense systems and diversifying its partnerships. This is no longer about simply maintaining NORAD or relying on US military technology for defense. It's about creating a new, more independent defense infrastructure that doesn't hinge on the US. While NORAD still exists, Canada is no longer depending entirely on its framework for protection. The decision to seek French submarines, Australian radar systems, and Swedish fighter jets is part of a strategic realignment that is shifting the balance of defense power in North America. In many ways, NORAD's role in Canadian defense is becoming secondary. While Canada will still work within the NORAD framework for cooperation on certain issues, it is also building its own defense capabilities outside of this alliance. This is not a denouncement of NORAD, but rather a strategic move to ensure that Canada maintains its own control over its defense future. This shift away from U.S. dominance in defense is not just about equipment. It's a broader geopolitical shift that reflects Canada's growing desire for self-reliance in the face of growing instability in U.S. foreign policy. As tensions continue to escalate between the United States and its trade partners, one thing is certain: President Trump's tariff policies are leaving deep scars on the global economy. These tariffs are not just a theoretical risk. They're already reshaping how businesses operate, both in the U.S. and abroad. And in Canada, the ripple effects of these policies are forcing significant shifts in strategy. Since taking office, President Trump has made tariffs a cornerstone of his economic policy. His administration has imposed tariffs on a wide range of goods, from steel and aluminum to consumer goods and even cars. While these tariffs were intended to protect American industries, they have caused significant economic friction, particularly with key trading partners like China and the European Union. For Canada, the effects have been particularly pronounced. As one of the U.S.'s most important trade partners, Canada has been caught in the crossfire of these tariff battles. In the face of Trump's escalating tariff policies, Canadian businesses are being forced to adapt rapidly. Many companies are rethinking their supply chains and looking for ways to mitigate the financial strain caused by higher tariffs. Businesses are diversifying their sources for raw materials, and some are even considering relocating parts of their manufacturing processes abroad, outside of the U.S. influence. Companies that once relied heavily on American suppliers are now turning to other markets, particularly those in Europe and Asia, to reduce their exposure to the U.S. tariff regime. One notable change is in the automotive industry. Canadian car manufacturers and their suppliers are scrambling to adjust to new tariffs on automotive imports and exports. With tariffs increasing on vehicles imported into the U.S., the cost of manufacturing cars in Canada has risen significantly. This is leading to shifts in production strategies and new trade agreements to buffer against potential losses. The broader impact of these tariff policies has triggered a reorientation of Canada's trade relationships. The country is beginning to shift its focus away from its historically dominant trade relationship with the U.S. towards stronger economic partnerships with Europe, Asia, and particularly South Korea. As the U.S. imposes higher tariffs on Canadian goods, businesses are looking for new markets to expand into. South Korea, for example, has already started to increase its trade relations with Canada, particularly in the energy and resource sectors. This shift reflects a growing recognition that reliance on the U.S. may not be as beneficial as it once was. By diversifying its economic ties, Canada can reduce its vulnerability to volatile U.S. trade policies. As Canada navigates the shifting tides of international trade, the country is also undergoing significant political changes. One of the most notable moves in Canadian politics recently has been the cancellation of a proposed capital gains tax increase. Prime Minister Mark Carney, in a bold decision, has chosen to scrap the controversial tax proposal, one that had been widely criticized by businesses, economists, and the opposition. The original proposal, which was meant to increase the proportion of capital gains subject to taxation, had sparked a firestorm of opposition. The plan aimed to raise the tax rate on capital gains for businesses and individuals with profits above $250,000. This tax increase was expected to bring in nearly $19.4 billion over 5 years, with the government planning to use the funds to finance critical infrastructure projects like affordable housing. However, the proposal was met with significant resistance. Canadian businesses argued that higher taxes would discourage investment and hurt the country's economic growth. The Liberal Party's polling numbers plummeted as a result of the backlash, and the party's leadership under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faced mounting pressure. In response, Carney's government moved quickly to scrap the tax measure and shift its focus to more business-friendly policies. In his decision to cancel the tax increase, Carney emphasized the need to catalyze investment and incentivize entrepreneurs and innovators to grow their businesses in Canada. He argued that by keeping the capital gains tax rate favorable, the government would encourage job creation, entrepreneurship, and the expansion of small businesses. Carney's move is also aimed at improving the Liberal Party's polling numbers. which had suffered under the weight of unpopular tax proposals. As the 2025 elections loom on the horizon, Carney's decisions are designed to restore confidence in his leadership and strengthen his position against the Conservative Party. By focusing on policies that support economic growth, Carney is positioning himself as a pragmatic leader who is committed to protecting Canadian businesses and driving prosperity.